So, I just watched the first two episodes of the One Piece live action, and I can't believe I'm about to say this, but holy shit, the One Piece live action is actually good, and I'm not talking about it not being shit or being badly watchable. It's actually a genuinely good show, and never in my life did I ever expect to like a live action anime, much less freaking One Piece of all anime. I am genuinely surprised and really impressed, although I do have some minor nitpicks about it, but overall, it's already, in my opinion, the best live action anime that's ever been produced, especially after stuff like the live action Death Note FMA and Dragon Ball Evolution, which is just on another tier in terms of being shit. And this One Piece live action is not just a good adaptation, but judging from these first two episodes, it's just a genuinely good show. And in terms of being an adaptation, this is honestly as good as it could have been. All the important moments and scenes are pretty much the same as the source, while changing up some of the minor moments and reordering some stuff in order to have better pacing and condense some stuff. Also, some of the added content in the live action actually makes the story better, which is crazy to think about. For example, it was revealed to us in the Alabasta saga that Baroque Works tried to recruit Zoro when he was in East Blue, and that is something we never got to see in the anime or the manga. Whereas in the live action, they used Mr. 7 trying to recruit Zoro as his introduction, which just works really well. You can tell all the people working on this genuinely cared about One Piece and respect the source material, considering all the Easter eggs and foreshadowing for stuff that is way later down the line, such as bounty posters for Foxy, Bellamy and Cavendish, Binks Sasaki playing in the background at Shanks' ship, Mihawk and Shanks being present at Roger's execution, and so much more. Also, side note, but I liked the change with Garp being present at Roger's execution and also giving us a line hinting at their familiarity with each other. That's not just the relationship of enemies. Also, the live action is like surprisingly dark in certain aspects, such as Alvida beating a guy to death with his blood splattered all over the ship and Kobe having to clean all that up, and Zoro straight up slicing Mr. 7 in half and carrying him around. Like, that's brutal AF. And in my opinion sets the tone for the series from the beginning, whereas in the anime and manga, the beginning feels more like a goofy adventure story where people get knocked out after being sliced by swords instead of bleeding to death. Although that's not to say that the One Piece manga wasn't dark at the beginning, it's just the fact that you slowly start to see just how dark the world of One Piece truly is, while luring you in with a false sense of pretense of it being a silly pirate adventure. And now I want to talk about both episodes in order and what I liked and did not like about them, while occasionally mentioning some changes that I noticed and what I think about them. So I guess let's start off with episode 1. And this episode starts off with Roger's execution and ends with the concluding of the Shell's Town arc, with Luffy having recruited Zoro and Nami, which, if you remember the anime/manga, Nami joins up with Luffy and Zoro after their encounter with Buggy, and this is probably the biggest change in episode 1. They made Nami more involved in Shell's Town arc while cutting down some of Kobe's moments, and honestly I'm kinda fine with it. Although I would have liked to see Kobe joining the Marines the way it was done in the anime, as it felt way more impactful, Luffy fighting Kobe in front of Marines in order to clear suspicion of his involvement with him, and the remaining Marines saluting to Luffy and Zoro for getting the town rid of Morgan's tyranny. Aside from that, I don't really have any complaints with this episode. Everything was done really well. I also really like how they are showing pieces of Luffy's backstory every episode instead of having one large chunk of an episode dedicated to it. All the character introductions were great and the casting was great, especially Helmeppo and Zoro. They both were easily the best part about this episode, and although I like Luffy's actor, there are certain times where it feels like he's trying a bit too much to imitate Luffy, but aside from that he did really great as well, and pretty much the same with Nami. Kobe and Alvida were honestly pretty perfect. They both fit their roles very well and their acting was very good in my opinion. Also, one more thing that I noticed was that they made Morgan stronger here, and they also mentioned the fact that he caught Kuro and defeated his crew, which also makes him feel a bit more threatening. And his fight also lasts way longer here than the anime, which was just pretty much 5 minutes. And I almost forgot to mention, but I actually really like the fights in the live action so far, which was something I expected to hate, but the fights, especially the sword fights, are done really well so far. And even the devil fruit scenes are not that bad at all, with some really good CGI in my opinion. Overall, a very good episode and a great start, and if I had to give it a rating, I would give it a nice 8.5 out of 10. And now moving on to the second episode. This episode concludes the Buggy and the Orange Town arc, and while this episode was still pretty good, I personally didn't like some of the creative decisions they made with this episode, and they changed things up quite a bit, and in my opinion for the worse this time around. Starting off with quite a big change is the fact that Buggy actually kidnaps the Straw Hats here instead of them running into him along with Nami in the anime. Also, they changed up Buggy's personality big time here. Obviously he's still Buggy, but they do remove a lot of his goofy aspects, which make him feel like a deranged psychopath here, and by no means is this an objectively bad decision, but I'm personally not a huge fan of it, considering that one of my favorite things about Buggy is just how silly he is and how the story never takes him seriously. But here he's actually a complete psychopath, considering that he destroyed the entire Orange Town and chained up every single one of the townspeople to his circus show. That is just so messed up to think about. We also conclude Luffy's backstory in this episode, and I'll be honest, it just didn't hit the same as the manga or even the anime. The moment where Shanks loses his arm felt way less impactful because of how they framed that shot, and I'll be honest, the acting wasn't that great in this scene, considering just how much of an important scene this is for the series. And it also doesn't help the fact that I'm not really the big fan of the child actor who plays Luffy as well as the actor for Shanks. Zoro stayed the best part about this episode as well, and I really like the fact that they are foreshadowing so much stuff for Nami, and all of that is getting me really hyped up for the you-know-what moment. Also, since this arc had to be condensed into one episode, one of my favorite early One Piece moments, which was the dog Shushu and him protecting his owner's store, had to be cut. And I'm actually genuinely sad that it had to be cut. Believe it or not, it was actually the moment that I was looking forward to the most before watching this episode. Also, the last big change that I noticed was the fact that they changed Garp's personality, and it's not even a little. He's genuinely like a completely different person here compared to the anime and manga. In the anime, he was much more goofy and felt like an older version of Luffy, especially with the gag of him always falling asleep. And in the live action, the way he talks and acts, you might assume they're setting him up to be the main antagonist of the series, when it couldn't be any further from the truth. But yeah, those are my thoughts on the second episode, and even though I talked about my complaints a lot, it was still a pretty decent episode in my opinion, although I liked it way less than the first episode. And I would rate it a solid 7 out of 10. But yeah, those are my first impressions of the One Piece live action so far, and considering that when it was announced, I never thought I would have given an episode more than a 4 out of 10 rating, I'm genuinely really shocked and impressed. Massive shout out to all the people who worked on it and all the cast members, because even though I have some issues with it, it is still a genuinely good show and actually managed to bring One Piece to life, which was something I didn't think was possible. With all that being said though, please leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it, and make sure to subscribe to my channel for my thoughts on the rest of the episodes. I think I'm gonna be making one video for every 2 episodes, and then a final video to cap it all off. With all that being said, have a nice day and peace.